The West Australian Government has created a redress scheme to be made available to members of the stolen generations. The announcement comes at the start of National Reconciliation Week, and Premier Roger Cook says the announcement is another step towards healing and aims to right the wrongs of past governments and policies.
Today we take small steps towards righting an historic wrong. The WA Stolen Generations Redress Scheme is a further step towards reconciliation and healing the past wrongs. It acknowledges the Stolen Generations era represents a sorrowful and shameful part of our history and recognises that it has caused cycles of disadvantage and intergenerational trauma. A payment of $85,000 will be made available. A payment of $85,000 will be made available to Aboriginal children who were removed from their families in Western Australia up until the 1st of July 1972, in recognition of the harm and trauma experienced by Stolen Generations survivor under historical laws and policies that disadvantage Aboriginal people. The WA Government, more importantly, will partner with WA Aboriginal organisations in additional measures to support members of the Stolen Generations, such as healing and truth-telling programs. WA now joins every state and territory, with the exception of Queensland, in offering a redress scheme.
Shannan Dodson is CEO of the Healing Foundation, which advocates for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who were forcibly removed from their families. Shannan joins us now. Welcome to you.
Thanks for having me.
What's your reaction to today's news from WA?
I think that it's a really welcome announcement. It's something that I know that survivors in Western Australia, but also Stolen Generation organisations have been advocating for decades, and there's been a lot of pressure to put this into place because we've already lost too many survivors, unfortunately. I myself have an auntie who was a survivor and she has now passed away, and I think it's just a reminder of just how quickly we need to put this into action. So I really welcome the announcement.
But why has it taken so long to get the scheme in place in WA?
I think there's a lot of things in play. It's a big effort to get a scheme in place because it's not just a matter of the money, it's also about the support that you can provide to survivors, not only before the scheme but after the scheme, and what does the actual healing look like as part of the scheme. So I think better late than never, but as I said, it is sad that there are survivors that were not able to see this come to fruition.
Shannan, what do you make of the amount that's being paid to surviving members of the Stolen Generations, $85,000? One of the speakers at the media conference a short time ago made the point that Victoria's Stolen Generations members receive $100,000. Is that correct?
I think that there is a lot of room for conversations between organisations like the Healing Foundation and Stolen Generation organisations with the WA government and policymakers about some of the specifics of the scheme. We have seen schemes in other parts of the country, as was said, except for Queensland, and so there is a lot of best practice there about how you can deliver a scheme that is going to have some kind of justice for survivors. So I welcome having those further conversations with them about the details.
It's particularly significant, isn't it, that the redress scheme is in place now in WA because so many children were removed from their families in that state.
Yeah, and WA does have one of the highest populations of survivors currently, as well as descendants. And I think that this is just been a long-awaited thing for those survivors who have seen other states commit to schemes. And I think that it's a real mixture of emotions today. I've spoken with a number of survivors that, it feels surreal, but I think that people are really keen to just get things moving and to make sure that survivors are at the centre of how this scheme is implemented.
What other elements of the scheme do you want to see put in place?
I think we really need to understand that money will never ever compensate what these survivors have experienced, but it is a validation of their experience and something that we see not only in Australia but internationally as a way to compensate people for injustices. But I think we have to remember that survivors need to be consulted heavily as to how it's implemented, and that there needs to be enough trauma-informed and culturally safe support provided to survivors throughout their journey with this scheme, not just during the process but afterwards. And that's where I think stolen generation organisations can come into play and hopefully get further funding to provide those healing activities for survivors.
Your dad, Mick Dodson, is a prominent lawyer who authored the Bringing Them Home report calling for reparations. So this news today must be especially personal for you.
Yeah, as I said, it's personal on a lot of levels. My family has been touched by removals, and I think, I do feel a responsibility and accountability to continue the work that my dad did. And I think this is really special for me and for him, but also for survivors, not just in WA, but across the country, because it's that recognition of that terrible stain on our history that's still impacting on so many of us today.
And this move in WA, Shannan, means that Queensland is the last state or territory not to have a redress scheme in place. Do you expect that to happen soon?
I hope so, and I will continue to have conversations with the Queensland Government, as I'm sure stolen generation organisations and survivors who have continually for decades had conversations, and really open to talking through what that might look like for Queensland, because I think it's important that all survivors have equitable redress, and we want to make sure that they can access that before they more sadly pass away.
What is the reluctance on behalf of the Queensland Government not to put a scheme in place so far?
I think that schemes, as I said, are complex in terms of how they can be rolled out, but I think that obviously, as we see, it's not impossible, and I really just hope that we can have some further conversations to ensure that Queensland survivors can have the same kind of access as other survivors in the country.